Chapter 4. Doctors. Where do I start? Doctors really don't get me. Mom's a nurse, so I guess she speaks their language, but they sure don't know how to talk to me. I've seen dozens of doctors in my life who all try to analyze me and figure me out. None of them can fix me, so I usually ignore them and act like the retarded person they think I am. I paste on a blank look, focus on one wall, and pretend their questions are too hard for me to understand. It's sort of what they expect anyway. When I turned 5, it was time to think about enrolling me in school. So my mother took me to a doctor whose job it was to figure out how smart I was. She wheeled me in, locked the brakes so my wheelchair would not roll, and made sure the lap strap was fastened. When my seatbelt comes undone, and it does every once in a while, I slide out of that wheelchair like a piece of wet spaghetti. The specialist was a very large man. The bottom button of his shirt had come undone, and his stomach poked through above his belt. Gross. "My name is Dr. Hughley," he said in a booming voice. For real, I couldn't make this stuff up. "We're going to play a game today, okay? I'll ask you some questions and you get to play with the toys here. Won't that be fun?" I knew it would be a long, long hour. He brought out a stack of well-used, hopefully not lead-tainted wood blocks, then leaned in so close to me I could see the pores in his face. Gross. "Can you stack these in order according to size?" he said loudly and slowly, as if I were hard of hearing and really stupid. But who was being stupid? Didn't he know I couldn't grab the blocks? Of course, I know which block was bigger than the other, but I couldn't stack them if he paid me money. So I just took my arm and swept them all to the floor. They fell with a wooden clatter. I tried not to laugh as he picked them up. He breathed really hard as he reached for them. Next, he held up glossy 8x10 cards with different colors painted on each one. "Tell me when you see the color blue, Melody," he said in that voice that told me he thought this was all a waste of time. When the blue card showed up, I pointed to it and made a noise. "Buh," I said. "Marvelous, tremendous, stupendous," he shouted. He praised me like I had just passed the test to get into college. If I could have rolled my eyes, I would have. Then he showed me green, so I kicked and made a noise, but my mouth can't make the G sound. The doctor looked disappointed. He scribbled something on his clipboard, pulled out another stack of cards, and then said loudly, "I'm going to ask you some questions now, Melody. These might be hard, but do your best, okay?" I just looked at him and waited while he placed the first set of cards in front of me. Number 1. Which of these is not like the others? Did he get this stuff from Sesame Street? He showed me pictures of a tomato, a cherry, a round red balloon, and a banana. I know he was probably looking for the balloon as the answer, but that just seemed too easy. So I pointed to the banana because the first 3 were round and red, and the banana was not. Dr. Hughley sighed, scribbled more notes, Number 2, he said. He showed me 4 more cards. This time there were pictures of a cow, a whale, a camel, and an elephant. Which animal gives birth to a calf? Now, I watch Animal Planet all the time. I know for a fact that all the animals he had pictured there had babies called a calf. I thought doctors were supposed to be smart. What to do? I hit each picture slowly and carefully, and then did it once more just to make sure he understood. I don't think he did. I heard him mumble, "Cow," as he wrote more notes. It was clear he was giving up on me. I noticed a copy of Goodnight Moon on his bookshelf. I think it was written in Spanish. It was called Buenas noches, Luna. That would have been fun to look at, but I had no way of telling him I'd like to see the book. After watching Sesame Street and Dora the Explorer a million times and sitting for hours watching the Spanish channels, I could understand quite a bit of Spanish if it was spoken slowly enough and at least enough words to read the title of that book. He never thought to ask me about that, of course. I knew the words and melodies of hundreds of songs, a symphony exploding inside my head with no one to hear it but me. But he never asked me about music. I knew all the colors and shapes and animals that children my age were supposed to know, plus lots more. In my head, I could count to 1,000, forward and backward. I could identify hundreds of words on sight, but all that was stuck inside. Dr. Hughley, even though he had been to college for like a million years, would never be smart enough to see inside of me. So I put on my handicap face and took my mind back to last summer when Mom and I went to the zoo. I really liked the elephants, but talk about stink. Actually, Dr. Hughley sort of reminded me of one of them. My mom and the doctor had no idea why I was smiling as we rolled into the waiting room while he wrote up his evaluation of me. It didn't take long. I'm always amazed at how adults assume I can't hear. They talk about me as if I'm invisible, figuring I'm too retarded to understand their conversation. I learned quite a bit this way, but this conversation was really awful. He didn't even try to soften the news for my mom, who I'm sure felt like she got hit by a truck. He began clearing his throat. "Mrs. Brooks," he then said, "it is my opinion that Melody is severely brain damaged and profoundly retarded." Whoa! Even though I was only 5, I had watched enough Easter Seals telethons to know that this was bad. Really bad. I felt a thud in my gut. My mom gasped, then said nothing for a full minute. Finally, she took a deep breath and protested quietly. "But I know she's bright. I can see it in her eyes." "You love her. It's only normal to have wishful thinking," Dr. Hughley told her gently. "No, she has a spark. More than that, a flame of real intelligence. I just know it," my mother insisted, sounding a little stronger. "It takes time to accept the limitations of a beloved child. She has cerebral palsy, Mrs. Brooks." "I know the name of her condition, doctor, but my mother said with ice in her voice. But a person is so much more than the name of a diagnosis on a chart." "Good try, Mom," I was thinking, but already her voice was losing its edge, melting into the mushiness of helplessness. She laughs at jokes, my mother told him, the ice in her voice replaced by desperation. Right at the punchline. Mom's voice faded. What she was saying sounded ridiculous, even to me, but I could see she just couldn't find the words to explain her gut feeling that I had some smarts stuck in there. Dr. Hughley looked from her to me. He shook his head, then said, "You're lucky she has the ability to smile and laugh. But Melody will never be able to walk on her own or speak a single sentence. She will never be able to feed herself, take care of her own personal needs, or understand anything more than simple instructions. Once you accept that reality, you can deal with the future." Well, I was just plain mean. My mom hardly ever cries, but she did that day. She cried and cried and cried. Dr. Hughley had to give her a whole box of tissues. Both of them ignored me while she sobbed and tried to find nice words to say to make her feel better. He didn't do a very good job. Finally, he gave her options. "You and your husband have several decisions to make," he told Mom. "You can choose to keep her at home, or you can send her to a special school for developmentally disabled. There aren't many choices here locally." Where do they get those almost pleasant-sounding phrases to describe kids like me? Mom made a sound that could have been the mewing of a kitten. She was losing it. Dr. Hughley continued, "You can also decide to put Melody in a residential facility where she can be cared for and kept comfortable." He pulled out a colorful brochure with a smiling child in a wheelchair on the cover and handed it to Mom. I trembled as she looked at it. "Let's see," the doctor said. "Melody is 5 now. That's a perfect age for her to learn to adjust to a new environment. You and your husband can get on with your lives without her as a burden. In time, her memories of you will fade." I stared at Mom frantically. I didn't want to be sent away. Was I a burden? I never thought about it like that. Maybe it would be easier for them if I wasn't around. I gulped. My hands got cold. Mom wasn't looking at me. She was staring daggers at Dr. Hughley. She crumpled up the tissue she held and stood up. "Let me tell you something, doctor. There is no way in heaven or hell that we will be sending Melody away to a nursing home." I blinked. Was this my mother? I blinked again, and she was still there, right up in Dr. Hughley's face. She wasn't finished. "You know what?" my mother said as she angrily hurled the brochure into the trash can. "I think you're cold and insensitive. I hope you never have a child with difficulties. You'd probably put it out with the trash." Dr. Hughley looked shocked. "And what's more," she continued, "I think you're wrong. I know you are. Melody has more brains hidden in her head than you'll ever have, despite those fancy degrees from fancy schools you got posted all over your walls." It was the doctor's turn to blink. "You've got it easy. You have all your physical functions working properly. You never have to struggle just to be understood. You think you're smart because you have a medical degree?" He was wise enough to keep his mouth shut and ashamed enough to lower his head. Mom was on a roll. "You're not so intelligent, sir. You're just lucky. All of us who have all our faculties intact are just plain blessed. Melody is able to figure out things, communicate, and manage in a world where nothing works right for her. She's the one with the true intelligence." She marched out of his office then, rolling me swiftly through the thick doors. In the hall, we did a quick fist bump. Well, best I could manage. My hands were no longer cold. "I'm taking you right now and enrolling you at Spalding Street Elementary School," she announced with a determination as we headed back to the car. "Let's get busy." Chapter 5. I have been at Spalding Street Elementary School for 5 years. It's very ordinary, filled with kids just like the schools I see on television shows. Kids who chase each other on the playground and run down the hall to get their desks just before the bell rings. Kids who slide on icy patches in the winter and stomp in puddles in the spring. Kids who shout and push. Kids who will sharpen their pencils, go to the board to do math problems, and open their books to read a poem. Kids who write their answers on a notebook paper and stuff their homework into backpacks. Kids who throw food at each other in the lunchroom while they sip on juice boxes. Kids who sing in the choir, learn to play the violin, and take gymnastics or ballet or swimming lessons after school. Kids who shoot baskets in the gym. Their conversation fills the halls as they make plans, make jokes, make friends. Kids who, for the most part, ignore kids like me. The special needs bus, as they call it, has a cool wheelchair lift built in the door, and it picks me up every morning in front of my house. When we get to school, the driver takes their time and makes sure all the belts and buckles are tight before they lower all of us with walkers or wheelchairs or crutches or helmets down the bus lift, one by one to the ground. Then an aide will roll us or help us walk over to a waiting area. When the weather is bright and sunny, we sit outside the school. I like to watch the regular kids as they play Foursquare while they wait for the bell to ring. They look like they're having so much fun. They ask one another to play, but no one's ever asked any of us. Not that we could anyway, but it would be nice if somebody would say, "Hi." I guess the Foursquare players must think we're all so backward that we don't care that we get treated as if we're invisible. I was so excited when Mom first enrolled me here. I thought I'd learn new things every day, but mostly it was simply something to do that took up time and got me out of the house. In second and third grades, I probably learned more from the Sci-Fi or Discovery channels than I ever learned at school. My teachers were nice most of the time, but they would have needed X-ray vision like Superman to see what was in my head. I am in a special program with other children with what they call disabilities. Our ages range from 9 to 11. Our learning community, what a joke, has been together since I started school. We never seem to move up and on like other classes. We just do what we did the year before, but with a new teacher. We don't even get a new classroom each year. So the same kids I'm with now were together in second grade with a teacher named Mrs. Tracy. As third graders, we suffered through Mrs. Billups, who could have got the award for the worst teacher in the world. There are 6 self-contained learning communities in our wing of the building. Children with various conditions, from preschoolers to kids who ought to be in high school by now. Our classroom, room H5, might be nice for babies, but give me a break. It's painted yellow and pink. One wall is covered with a sun with a happy face, a huge rainbow, and dozens of flowers, also with smiley faces. The other wall is painted with happy bunnies, kittens, and puppies. Bluebirds fly all over the sky with perfect white clouds. Even the birds are smiling. I'm almost 11 years old, and if I have to look at puppies in paradise one more day, I think I'll puke. Ashley, the youngest in our group, actually does puke quite a bit. She's 9, but she could pass for 3. She has the smallest wheelchair I've ever seen. She's our fashion model. She is just plain beautiful. Movie star eyes, long curly hair, and a tiny pixie nose. She looks like a doll that you see in a box on a shelf, except she's prettier. Her mother dresses her in a perfectly matching outfit every day. If she has on a pink shirt, she wears pink slacks, pink socks, and 2 tiny pink bows in her hair. Even her little fingernails have been done to match. When we do what the teachers and therapists call group activities, it's hard for Ashley to participate. Her body is really stiff, and it's tough for her to reach or grab or hold anything. Every Christmas, they made the kids in room H5 decorate a stupid 6-foot styrofoam snowman. I don't know what the children in the regular classrooms get to do, but I know it's close to holiday time when whatever teacher we have that year pulls out this thing out of the closet. Mrs. Hyatt, the kindergarten teacher, loved that messed up snowman. Just 3 huge balls of yellowing styrofoam stuck together with pins and pipes. "Let's decorate, children," she said in her squeaky and annoying voice. "We're gonna place decorations with Velcro or toothpicks or glue or whatever works on Sydney, our H5 holiday snowman." I don't know how old the snowman was at that point, but poor Sydney could not stand up straight. It leaned like a drunk who needed the wall to hold it up. Mrs. Hyatt gave us green snowflakes. Green? We were the dumb kids. I guess we weren't supposed to care. Brown garland, stars in purple and pink. "Do you like the snowman, Ashley?" Mrs. Hyatt asked her. It's almost impossible for Ashley to communicate because her body is so tight. Her talking board has just 2 words on it: yes and no. She turned her head slightly to the left for no. I bet she wished she could knock the thing down. Compared to Ashley, Carl is huge. Even though he's just 9, he's got a special wheelchair that's extra wide, and it takes 2 aides to lift him in and out of it. But he's good with his hands. He can move his own chair, and he can hold a pencil well enough to write his name and stab a snowman. Carl sticks pencils and rulers into the snowman's torsos and pens into its head. Mrs. Hyatt used to clap her hands and say in her little squeaky voice, "Good job, Carl, so very creative." Carl would just laugh. He can talk, but only in very short sentences. They usually have 2 parts. He has very strong opinions. "Snowman is dumb," he'd yell. "Very, very dumb." I think he hates the snowman as much as I do. One year, he pinned a diaper on the back and another in the front of the bottom third of the snowman. The teacher let them stay. Carl knows diapers. When he poops in his pants, which is almost every day, the whole room smells like the monkey house at the zoo. The aides are so patient with him, though. They step on their rubber gloves, clean him up, change his clothes. He always wears sweats, and sit him back in his chair. Those aides deserve medals. We're not an easy bunch. Maria, who has Down syndrome, is 10. She loves Christmas and Easter and Valentine's Day and Earth Day. It doesn't matter. If it's a holiday, Maria is ready to celebrate. She's wide around the middle, a little like our snowman, but Maria talks all the time. She's fun to be around, even though she insists on calling me Melly Belly. Every year when it's time to bring out the ancient snowman, Maria jumps up and cheers with real excitement. I'm pretty sure she's the only kid in our class who truly likes it. It's time for Sydney the snowman, she gasps. Can I put his hat on? Please, please? Can I give him my red scarf? Sydney will love my red scarf. Mrs. Hyatt and every teacher after her always let Maria take charge of the green paper cutout candy canes and the purple striped stars cut from wrapping paper. Maria kisses each decoration before attaching it with Velcro to the snowman. She hugs Sydney each afternoon before she goes home, and she cries when it's time to put Sydney away each year. Even though she has trouble figuring out complicated stuff, Maria understands people and how they feel. Why are you sad today, Melly Belly? She asked me one morning a couple years ago. How could she have known that my goldfish had died the day before? I let her give me a big hug, and I felt better. If Maria is our hugger, Gloria is our rocker. She rocks for hours in the corner under one of the dumb smiling flowers. The teachers are always trying to coax her out, but she wraps her arms around herself like she's cold and keeps on rocking. She's autistic, I think. She can walk perfectly well, and she talks when she has something to say. It's always worth listening to. Snowman makes me shiver, she blurted out one day when the classroom was surprisingly quiet. She curled up in her corner and said nothing else until it was time to go home. She's never added one decoration to our snowman, but she does uncurl and seem to relax when a teacher puts on a CD of holiday music. Willie Williams, yes. That's his real name, is 11. I'm not sure what his diagnosis is. He yodels like one of those Swiss people on a mountain climbing commercial. He makes other noises too, whistles and grunts and shrieks. He's never, ever quiet and never completely still. I sometimes wonder if he makes all those noises and movements in his sleep. When Sydney the snowman comes out of whatever box they keep him in during most of the year, the teacher has to keep Willie at a distance because he'll knock the wobbly thing down. Willie's not trying to be mean. It's just that his arms and legs are in constant motion and he can't help it. Mrs. Hyatt was the first teacher to witness Sydney topple over. Why don't you add this bright pink bow to our snowman? She had squeaked to Willie that first year. All arms and movement, Willie tried, but the stupid pink bow went in one direction and poor Sydney went in the other. 3 separate balls rolled across the room. Willie shrieked and whistled. I think I saw him smile as well. Now, if Mrs. Hyatt had given Willie a baseball to glue to the snowman, it would have been placed more carefully. Willie loves baseball. Our first grade teacher, Mr. Gross, liked to play guessing games. Willie just blurbed if the questions were about butterflies or boats, but watch out if the question was about baseball. He'd screech out the right answer before he yelps and bellows took over. Who was the first player to hit 60 home runs in one season? Mr. Gross asked. Babe Ruth! Ah! Who broke Babe Ruth's record of 714 home runs? Hank Aaron! Woo! And who is the all-time hit king? Mr. Gross seemed to be astonished at Willie's knowledge. Beat Rose! 4-2-5-6. Eek! And who holds the lifetime touchdown record? Silence. Not even a squeak. Well, he doesn't bother with football or snowmen. Sometimes when I look at Willie, though, I get the feeling that he really wishes he could be still and silent. I watch him as he closes his eyes, frowns up his face, and concentrates. For just a few minutes, he's quiet. He takes a deep breath like a swimmer coming up for air. When he opens his eyes, the noises start all over. And he always looks sad. Jill uses a walker because her left foot drags a little as she walks. She's thin and pale and very quiet. When Sydney comes out for the season, Jill's eyes are almost blank. It's like the light has been clicked off. She cries a lot. Mr. Gross used to put decorations in her hand and try to make it easy for her to join the activity, but it was like helping a store mannequin. I heard an aide say that she was in a car accident when she was a baby. I think that's awful, to start out okay, then lose the ability to do stuff. Freddie, who's almost 12, is the oldest in our group. He uses an electric wheelchair. He loves that thing. He tells me every chance he gets, "Freddie go zoom, Freddie go zoom." He grins and pretends he's putting on a helmet, and then he pushes the controller to its max position and takes off across the room. Of course, his speed has 2 settings: slow and slower. But to Freddie, he's at the racetrack. He zooms his electric chair around the raggedy old snowman, tossing Velcroed stars and bells at it, asking, "Snowman go zoom, zoom?" Well, after really scented flying and Carl tried to stab it with pencils, I guess it was a fair question. Every year, Freddie adds his own touches to the snowman. NASCAR and NASA decals like the ones on his chair. If you ask Freddie what the date is, he can't tell you. But if you want to know who won the Daytona 500, Freddie will know. And then there's me. I hate the stupid snowman. But I toss tinsel at me like they asked me to. It's easier than trying to explain. I have a large plexiglass tray that fastens to the arms of my chair. It serves as a food tray as well as a communication board. When I was younger, Mom pasted dozens of words on it, but I was still limited to only a handful of common nouns, verbs, and adjectives, some names, and a bunch of smiley faces. There were also a few necessary phrases like, "I need to go to the bathroom, please," and "I'm hungry," but most people, even little kids, need to say more than that in a day. Duh. I've got please and thank you, yes, no, and maybe close together on the right-hand side, but on the left are the names of people in my family, kids in my class, and teachers. The name Sydney is not included. There's an alphabet strip at the top so I can spell out words, and a row of numbers under that so I can count or say how many or talk about time. But for the majority of my life, I've had the communication tools of a little kid on my board. It's no wonder everybody thinks I'm retarded. I hate that word, by the way. Retarded. I like all the kids in room H5, and I understand their situations better than anybody. But there's no one else like me. It's like I live in a cage with no door and no key, and I have no way to tell someone how to get me out. Oh, wait, I forgot about Mrs. V.